Syneto. Your data, our business.
Welcome to the webinar, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about the brand new HYPERSeries 2000, which you will get to meet today. And we are also going to be showcasing a few new innovations that we've added and that are quite revolutionary. So I'm sure you will find them very interesting. Just to get a few of the organizational details out of the way, you can write any and all questions inside the questions tab of the webinar application, and at the end we will answer any of them in a dedicated question and answer section. On behalf of myself and the entire team over here at Syneto, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to attend this webinar and to be with us today. I know from personal experience that time is a very valuable commodity. And since we're on the subject, allow me to present myself. My name is Rakesh Khurana. I'm a technical marketer with Syneto. I've been with the company for over 8 years. I also happen to be wearing the hat of VP of Marketing. That's why I'm in a great position to answer any and all questions you might have, be they commercially related to our products and services or of a technical nature. My contact details are on screen. If you're not following me on Twitter or LinkedIn yet, we can connect. You can drop me a personal email if you'd like. Also joining us today is my colleague Rick Dutson, who is our VP of Sales in EMEA. And at the end, during the dedicated question and answer time, he will gladly answer any sort of commercial or channel related questions you might have. So I'd like to start with a short summary of why and for who we are building our products and solutions. And the first thing I want to get into are a few strategic assumptions. So first off, Gartner states that the market for hyperconverged systems will grow by about 80% and reach about a quarter of the market until 2019. So at this point, we are certainly talking about mainstream use of hyperconverged infrastructures, and in the next half an hour, we'll see why this is important. Also, in 2020, 30% of organizations will have replaced their traditional backup solutions with native technologies like snapshots based on software-defined storage or hyperconverged infrastructures. That's up from 15% today. And also in 2020, 20% of storage systems will be self-protecting. And this is very important because it eliminates the need for third-party backup software. And that's up from today's 5%. And I am proud to say that Syneto is and has been for some time now part of this 5%. Now, in order to understand what Syneto does, we have to look at today's IT challenges, because what Syneto does as a company is that we create products that solve these IT challenges. And if you talk to any IT manager out there today, he will certainly tell you that his problems start and end with budget cuts, getting infrastructure that has less risk, that is more efficient, that is smarter, and that is, of course, easier to use. And many of these IT challenges stem from the fact that today's traditional IT infrastructure is designed in pieces. So you have your separate SANs and NAS, your storage controllers connected through switches to servers, onto which the whole virtualization and virtual application layer runs. And you also have the disaster recovery component that is also a DR server, a backup repository. And this disaster recovery piece allows you to recover your data and restart your virtual applications in case of a disaster. Now, the issues with this type of traditional siloed in pieces IT infrastructure, it's that of course it has high acquisition costs because you have to buy all the different components separately. The data protection side is not very well defined, again, because it is all siloed, it is all divided up, and of course, it is complex to manage. On the disaster recovery side, your recovery time objective, so the amount of time it would take for you to recover your data and restart your applications, is right now on average about 8 hours. So this is a really high recovery time objective. And at the same time, disaster recovery infrastructures are inefficient in their space usage. You usually need 2 to 3 times the amount of space that you have on the primary infrastructure. So what we do is we have created a solution, a hyper-converged infrastructure solution that blends these two pieces together. It takes everything that the primary infrastructure does in terms of storage, networking, and applications, and puts it together with what the DR infrastructure does in terms of replicating, receiving replicated data from the primary infrastructure and allowing you to restart your IT services in case something goes wrong, in case you have a downtime incident. So our concept is simply this: an all-in-one IT infrastructure with built-in disaster recovery that gives you high application performance at a lower price point than a traditional solution because it is less complex. Again, because of the complexity, that allows us to have built-in data protection. It is easy to use and have support from a single vendor. But we also have to look at who our target market is. Who do we design products for? So Syneto builds solutions for and dedicated to small and medium businesses, and especially small and medium businesses in Europe, since this is our home base. So let's look at the small and medium business in Europe. Eurostat defines it as being, in the case of a medium business, having under 2,250 employees and with a revenue of under 50 million euros. A small business would be under 50 employees and with a revenue of no more than 10 million euros. But if we look at the United Kingdom, we can see that there are almost 5.4 million companies that are in the SMB range, so under 250 employees. And this is 99.3% of all companies out there with a turnover of 1.2 trillion pounds. And this is incredibly important because what this shows us is that the majority of companies are in this target market. And we'll see as we move forward why this is very important. But the real question is, how much money can a small and medium business spend on an enterprise-grade IT infrastructure that will give them all the IT services they need at the level of usability, security, and with a low risk of downtime that they actually need? Because you have to keep in mind that SMBs are still a company, they're still a business, they still have the same needs as something like a Fortune 2000 company. And this brings us the HYPERSeries 2000, which you will get to meet today in great detail. The HYPERSeries 2000 is the first hyperconverged infrastructure that is designed for small businesses. So those companies with 50 employees and up to 10 million euros in turnover. It is specifically designed from the get-go for the needs of the S in SMBs. Looking at the market positioning of Syneto today, we can see that there is an absolutely humongous opportunity. Because if we look at the market and how much companies can spend, in the lower side, you have the software-only DIY hyperconverged products that are built from different pieces. They are difficult to deploy because it requires a lot of IT know-how, and in most SMBs, there is only an IT generalist that is taking care of everything from the printers to the IT infrastructure itself. And also because you buy the hardware and the software from different vendors, you don't have the ability to go to one single vendor for your support needs. And on the upper side of the market, you have the enterprise grade products. Nutanix used to be SimpliVity, now they've been bought over by HP. But these are excellent products that service these enterprise companies, the global 200,000, but they are too expensive. They only come in 3-node configurations. They don't have built-in disaster recovery. And this sort of scenario is usually overkill for most small and medium businesses. But in between this 15,000 euro, which is the software only, and the over 35,000 euro, which are the enterprise players, there is a huge opportunity. And this is where Syneto is positioned. Our products right now, the HYPERSeries 3000 that we've launched this spring and the new HYPERSeries 2000 sit exactly in this price range, which we have found talking to literally thousands of resellers and end users, that it is exactly the amount of investment that an SMB can make in an IT infrastructure. So the HYPERSeries 2000 delivers precisely on this promise. It is an all-in-one IT infrastructure that can run a virtual workload. It can natively share files. It has built-in data protection with up to 1,440 backups for every VM or file share per day. And it has built-in disaster recovery that can allow a user to recover his entire IT infrastructure in just 15 minutes in case something happens. The HYPERSeries 2000 is built for and is a great choice for companies like design studios, publishing houses, accounting agencies, law offices, and also remote offices of larger companies. That's because the way it is designed, it can handle both the virtual machine workload and the media and files that these companies often have. And because it has built-in disaster recovery, it can recover everything very quickly in case something goes wrong. And many of these companies, like accounting agencies or law offices, they have really strict deadlines and they cannot afford to have more than a few minutes of downtime in case they need to submit some of their customers' numbers or some of their legal documents. And in the case of remote offices, of course, the budgets are always really strict. And we have seen many scenarios amongst our customers where they will deploy a bigger Syneto infrastructure inside their headquarters with something like a HYPERSeries 2000 that is deployed in the remote office and that can handle everything related to the workload that takes place in the remote offices. Now, the HYPERSeries 2000 is designed to run 7 medium virtual machines. It can run more than that in a mixed workload scenario, so several smaller virtual machines and a few medium virtual machines. It has a hybrid capacity that is 4 terabytes, but with all our data saving technologies like inline data compression, we usually see up to 2 times the amount of capacity that is actually the effective capacity. So it can do 8 terabytes of effective capacity. It has about 48 gigabytes of memory that is usable by the virtual machines, and a completely separate 12 gigabyte layer that is designed to work with our advanced tiering and caching mechanisms in order to deliver the promise of virtual machine performance that I mentioned previously. Of course, it comes with 2 units. It has a primary unit and a secondary unit. They are both designed to have the same configuration. And this leads us to the sort of deployment scenarios that you can have with the HYPERSeries 2000. First off, you can do a standard replication scenario where the primary unit runs the entire workload, this being the virtual applications and the files, and it automatically replicates this data to the DR unit every 60 seconds. And in case something happens with the data on the primary unit or the VMs, the data can be recovered, or the VMs can be restarted on the disaster recovery unit in as little as 15 minutes. And this leads us to the second deployment scenario, which is a cross-replication scenario, in the sense that both the primary and the DR unit are active at the same time. They share part of the workload with some capacity dedicated to storing all the backups of the VMs from the other unit. In this scenario, both of them are working, and both of them have the backups replicated between them. The HYPERSeries 2000, for simplicity's sake, has only a single model, and this is the HYPERSeries 2111, which makes it very simple to understand. And one more thing, as I promised at the start of our webinar today, there are quite a few new innovations that we are announcing. And the biggest one of them all is something that is very related to the challenges of IT. Now, if we turn back to these IT challenges, we can see that ease of use sort of encompasses a few of the others, because an IT infrastructure that is easy to use is at the same time efficient, it has lower risk, and basically encompasses a bit of all of the others. So we are very much focused on giving the IT generalist, which is managing the IT infrastructure in SMBs, an infrastructure that is fail-safe and that is easy to understand and use and will not complicate his life and make the company need to invest more resources. And hyperconvergence as a technology promises to deliver this simplicity and has promised to do so for quite some time. But here is our answer to that. Here is how we are taking this concept of ease of use to the next level. And that next level is SynetoOS 4. SynetoOS 4 is the operating system. It's a completely new operating system that ships with every unit and of the HYPERSeries 2000. It is the first operating system in the world specifically designed to run in a hyperconverged environment with built-in disaster recovery, and it is specifically designed for small and medium businesses. This is very important because SynetoOS 4 has the ability, due to the technology that we developed over this, we have developed a completely new metadata layer over the file system that makes the file system itself VM sensitive, which means that it knows what kind of virtual applications it has running on it. It knows what kind of object it is, be it a VM or a data store, and it can interact with it and protect it in more powerful ways than ever before. At the same time, aside from being VM sensitive, SynetoOS 4 is also DR aware. So it knows how to interact with the backups. It knows what kind of backup it is. And this simplifies enormously the amount of management and time any user of the HYPERSeries 2000 with SynetoOS 4 needs to invest. And this leads us to our concept with SynetoOS 4. One click, everything. An operating system that will allow the user, without having a lot of time, without having a lot of resources to invest, it will allow him to manage a powerful enterprise-grade hyperconverged infrastructure. If you look at the screenshot of this dashboard, everything is very handy. Everything is presented in a way that is easy to use by the user. You can see that the data protection and the application side are all integrated into a single interface that allows the user to apply this concept of one-click everything. And we've built something like a machine intelligence capability inside SynetoOS 4 with one-click system status, in the sense that instead of doing his own investigation work, the IT manager using the HYPERSeries 2000 and SynetoOS 4 has a very simple screen into which the intelligence that's in the software brings all the information about the different components in IT services and alerts him if something is not going completely according to plan. So in one single click, he does not need to invest any of his time into seeing what is going well and what is not on the IT infrastructure. We are also delivering on the concept of a one-click data center. So inside the virtual machines tab, you can easily see what the protection is for every VM. You can browse its snapshots, everything in a single click. And you can also, if you have a few virtual machines running on it, you can simply search through them instantly in order to see the virtual machine that you want to manage. And also one-click provisioning. What this means is that our own proprietary middleware interacts with the hypervisor, allowing a user, when he creates a new data store, for example, he only needs to input the name of the data store and everything else is completely automatic. The system transports everything to VMware, to the hypervisor, and creates a holistic and easy to use experience that only needs a single click on the new data store button in order to achieve this. And also, because the DR is built in and because the file system is DR aware, what this allows us to do is one-click protection, and you only need to schedule a backup process to run a single time, and then it will be completely automatic. It will replicate the backup to the DR unit, where it will be ready and standby for the user to reactivate or search through in case something goes wrong and he needs to recuperate that data, or he needs to restart the VM for some reason, which leads us to the concept of one-click VM recovery. Now, I know that everybody loves calendars, and so do we. We organize our lives around it. And with SynetoOS 4, in order to go back in time to any state a VM or file share had, you simply need to click on the calendar on the day that you desire to see and to access the data, and it will display all the backups that have been done during that day, and you can recover any of the data that you want. Now, SynetoOS 4, that's a bit of an inside joke. We almost decided to go ahead with it without a manual, because it's so easy to use that absolutely anybody can do it. But don't be afraid, we will do a manual for it. But the level of simplicity that we've managed to achieve with our one-click everything philosophy, which has been basically the foundation on which we built the new OS 4, is basically allowing us to attain this new level of simplicity. That is a very important fact for SMBs and for the IT generalist who manages this sort of infrastructure. Now, the HYPERSeries 2000 will be available on the configurator starting October the 23rd. If you want to learn more, if you like what you've seen so far with the HYPERSeries 2000 and especially with SynetoOS 4, we will gladly arrange demos and more information for you. Now, that brings us to the end of today's presentation. If you have any questions, please use the questions tab in the webinar application, and we will gladly answer them for you. If not, There are also documents in the forms of handouts that we've added to this webinar. You can simply click on them and download. There's the data sheet that we've prepared, and it contains all the technical specifications of the HYPERSeries 2000. And also there's a product overview document that details all the benefits that this product has. So I'd like to thank you for attending the webinar today. Hopefully you found the information interesting, and hopefully we'll get in touch soon if you want to learn more about the HYPERSeries and about SynetoOS 4. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Syneto, your data, our business.